Welcome to the video, guys. You might remember this article that's up on the screen now from the 19th of March this year, saying Boris Johnson urged to join EU procurement scheme to secure ventilators. Because to Remoaners like the Independent at this time, the EU was considered by them and many other left-wing losers to be a shining beacon of hope for them. Now obviously, we're 3 weeks on from this article, and Boris Johnson and the UK government appear to have made the right move, leaving of course the Remoaners once again on the side that is proven wrong, much like the election last year and the whole Brexit situation in general. It said here, Boris Johnson is being urged to join an EU procurement scheme to secure ventilators to treat people affected by coronavirus amid fears there is likely to be a shortage. The European Commission is organising a joint procurement of ventilators and protective equipment for medics like masks, with the vast majority of EU member states set to take part. The programme is likely to reduce costs and pool resources for countries taking part because of the bloc's large collective buying power when dealing with medical equipment manufacturers. With obviously there the Liberal Democrats saying we will only beat this threat posed by COVID-19 by working together with our friends and partners in Europe and around the world. Which, obviously, being from the Lib Dems, surprises no one. They are essentially an extension of the European Commission, if you ask me. We all see what happened with Guy Verhofstadt and Jo Swinson in the lead up to the last election, which, admittedly, probably torpedoed any chance she had of actually getting a decent number of seats. But surprise, surprise, they're obviously wrong again. With this article coming on the 3rd of April, no quick deliveries of COVID-19 ventilators, the EU says. With the same also being said here, it will take time for the EU to get large numbers of ventilators quickly to treat COVID-19 patients, a Commission spokesman said Friday. The executive launched a joint procurement in March. Suppliers had been selected and countries can begin negotiating deliveries, taking into account the difficult situation of the markets and the complexity of products like ventilators. Their production and delivery is expected to take more time, the spokesman said. Meaning, as we all suspected at the time, the Lib Dems and every other Remoaning media outlet that was promoting the story I showed you earlier were obviously flat wrong, because being part of the EU procurement programme would have actually hindered our ability to get more ventilators into the country, as you can clearly see is the case at the moment in the European Union. And let's also not forget the fact that the European Union has essentially left its member states to their own devices when dealing with this situation. Now obviously we all know Boris Johnson is still in hospital at the moment and spent his second night in intensive care, but this article claims his temperature has fallen, so that is positive news at least. But that story is not what we're really interested in. It says here, later last night, Donald Trump claimed that the UK called the US with an urgent plea for 200 ventilators, as ministers seek to scramble to boost capacity for the sickest of patients. We're going to work it out. We've got to work it out, he said at a press conference in Washington. They've been great partners. They wanted 200, they need them desperately. Which I think you would agree, once again shows that not being part of this so-called EU procurement scheme was actually a smart move by the government. Whether they intended to do it that way or not is really quite irrelevant. At the end of the day, as you saw in those articles a moment ago, the EU is struggling to procure ventilators for the member states. When if reports are actually to be believed about the ventilator situation in this country, they have been going up here, while, by the sounds of it, not going up in the EU. Now obviously, Trump saying what he said about sending us ventilators has set off the left-wing media, as I'm sure surprises no one. With this Daily Mail article headlining, anger at Trump for sending ventilators to the UK, while states are desperately scrambling for every life-saving machine they can find. Donald Trump's decision to send 200 ventilators to the UK after London called to say it was in desperate need of the life-saving machines has been met with anger among US citizens. What they really mean is the left-wing shitweasels on Twitter who are a bit butthurt about this. Now, on the face of it, it does seem a bit silly for the Americans to be sending us 200 ventilators, but I expect there has been a deal done for something in return that the US likely also needs. Many denounced the move, arguing that the US could not afford to give away any of these machines, while states are scrambling to procure them for patients amid a global shortage. Which, here obviously you can see the tweets. Why is Trump sending 200 ventilators? As state governors plead with Trump to do more to help them, Trump says he's sending ventilators to the UK. Obviously blue check mark there. Obviously surprises none of you. But the point of this is not really to decide whether or not it's right for the US president to send ventilators over here. I don't know all the facts of the deal that's been done to get these ventilators over here, so I really can't say. My point is, not being a part of the EU's procurement scheme seems to have been a very good move. And obviously, unlike what the media have suggested, and of course Barack Obama said before, the UK, it appears, is right at the front of the queue when it comes to dealing with the United States and Donald Trump, with the EU lagging behind as the useless, incompetent shitweasels that they are, which probably explains why the EU's science chief quits in frustration at politicians' response to the coronavirus. With the new European Ramonin rag and practically every other news outlet reporting on this, the head of the European Union's top science organisation has resigned in frustration at the height of the coronavirus crisis. Mauro Ferrari had only become president of the European Research Council on January the 1st, but EU Commission spokesman Johannes Bach said Professor Ferrari resigned effective immediately. The sudden resignation of the professor and his stinging criticism was bound to add to pressure on EU institutions, which have been accused of not working together to battle the global pandemic. The news was first announced by the Financial Times based on a statement released to the paper by the professor himself, who said he had been extremely disappointed by the European response to the pandemic, which is something I've pointed out many times in relation, of course, to Italy and the way they have been treated, along with Spain and many other countries. He complained about running into institutional and political obstacles as he sought to swiftly set up a scientific program to combat the virus. I have seen enough of both governance of science and the political operations at the European Union, he wrote. I have lost faith in the system itself, which obviously losing their top science officer is not a good thing. But the shit show that is the EU and their current situation is being exacerbated by the fact that we now have reports coming in marathon talks over EU virus rescue package have stalled. So, once again, they can't figure out how they're going to save their failing economies once this shit show is finished. Because of course, no one wants to pay for it. We're no longer part of it, so we won't be taking that burden, or at least we shouldn't be. Hopefully, the UK government will stick to their guns on that. The European Central Bank says the bloc may need up to 1.5 trillion to tackle the current crisis. European finance ministers were close to a deal, but the talks broke down amid a dispute between Italy and the Netherlands over how to apply the recovery fund. Negotiations will resume on Thursday. The coronavirus pandemic has exposed deep divides in Europe, where Italy and Spain have accused northern nations led by Germany and the Netherlands of not doing enough, which I reported on a couple of times. The row comes as obviously the EU's top scientists step down. Italy, Spain and France and some other EU states want to share out coronavirus incurred debt in the form of corona bonds or euro bonds, mutualised debt that all EU nations help to pay off, which is actually in the spirit of obviously the EU, but not something that most countries would go for, and I suppose rightly so. But if you want to be part of a unified bloc, then you have to take the rough with the smooth. An all-night teleconference between Eurozone finance ministers to discuss this started on Tuesday and went on for 16 hours. But Italy refused to back down on its demands. Yeah, because Italy is in a shit state right now. The Netherlands opposes the proposal and wants member states to have repayment conditions phased in over the years. Italy remains at the centre of the crisis in Europe, with the highest death toll, more than 17,000. Next comes Spain, with nearly 14,000 deaths, Johns Hopkins University data shows. So you can see here that Spain and Italy are essentially being left out to dry when it comes to not only direct help from the EU, but also the possibility of having to pay this back. Italy's been locked down for I don't know how long now, so their economy is likely struggling a lot more than other EU nations. And obviously, none of the northern ones want to pay for it, taking the EU closer and closer to its demise, which I have to say I will celebrate. And is proving the government and me and many others right, along with the 17.4 million people who voted for Brexit. Because this situation is showing us getting out of the EU is probably the best choice this country has made in many decades. After this situation, the government needs to start making some more decent choices because let's be honest, governments over the years have consistently failed the people of this country. Now before I go, I've started doing live streams and uploading gaming content on my second channel. If you would like to come and join me for a live stream to chat in real time, have an interest in gaming related content on YouTube, or just want to follow me over there because you are a legend, the link will be down in the video description below and as a pinned comment. I hope to see you all there. Now as always, before I go, I want to thank our PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar and YouTube members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going and we are glad to be going. We're off.